What's going on, everybody? I am BirdDog John. Thanks for joining us today, and we are going to kick things off here. It is 1 a.m. in Melbourne. Well, it is that time again, everybody. Hope you are doing well. My name is BirdDog John, and I am back in action.
In those scenarios, it's good to neuralize the cameras. You guys know that best.
Very straightforward. Plug it in, go to the web UI, link the source, walk away. You know, like super simple. I keep looking over at the chat and I keep seeing you are full of it. Tasty, spicy meat snacks. Covered in flavor. I mean, you can't go wrong. So what's going on? We've got a handful of folks here in the chat, and I really appreciate that. What's up, mate? Hey, Warren, how are you? Appreciate it. Hey, Robbie, how's it going, man? You're just talking about you. What's going on, Tom? Ahoy. How is it going? What's going on, Go Web? Good to see you again. Thanks for hanging out with us again today. Appreciate that. Feel like I'm in this video more than anyone but John. It's true, NetApp. You are, I'm going to cut this up and put this in the next intro. What's happening, everybody? I am indeed BirdDog John, and we are back again for at least an hour. Hang out and chat and see what's going on in the world. And so, as usual, I have put up the Where Are You From QR code, which you're welcome to scan with a device and check in on our heat map as to where you're watching from. Appreciate anybody that jumps on that, and we can even put that up here if I had my screen capture running. So let me get that going. It's been kind of it's one of those mornings, you know, that's just been kind of a bizarre, everything has been going in a million directions here. So here's that heat map that shows where people are. So one guy over in Perth and somebody checking in. We'll have to look, I guess. I don't think, do I have that here? Yeah. So I got Perth and Auburn, New Hampshire. So that's pretty fun. Exciting stuff. Thanks for hanging out with us today. Really appreciate it. And if you'd like to put your little pin on the heat map, boom, just like that. Somebody checking in from Detroit. That is always appreciated. So very cool. Thank you for coming along. I am actually in the process of setting up a device. So I had an issue with one of my BirdDog plays that we were doing some testing on, putting some beta software on or whatever, and I think I fried it. And so instead of that, I've grabbed another one of the ones that we were testing on, and that also wasn't booting correctly, so I need to reimage that play. Here's the thing about the support office is, like, we have a hodgepodge of things, but we don't have like the reason the products are in our office is because they're not working. So that is very much so a real thing. And so it shouldn't surprise anybody that it's not functioning correctly. Anyway, so I was like 2 minutes before the show and I like put the play on. It like it didn't come up correctly. And then I like tried to figure it out, whatever. I gave it to my guy out in the hallway here and he's going to take a look at it for me. But in the meantime, I was like, okay, what can I use? And you know what I did? I grabbed Old Faithful, the BirdDog Studio, and I threw her over there, and now she is up and running. I got her in decode mode. So we're going to open up the decode menu. I think I have her in decode mode. Let's see what's going on here. Okay, so click on decode. What is happening? Man, if it's not one thing, it's something else, right? Okay, let's try this instead. I'm going to go, I had to IPv6 into it because I didn't catch the IP address. So now I'm on with the IP address. And for some reason, it won't let me select anything on the AV menu. So let's go ahead and restart video. Whoa, that's fun. That's doing some crazy things over on the screen. And now the AV screen doesn't work. Wow, this is exciting stuff. Page not found. Cool. All right, so we're going to reboot this device. And now, to be fair, I didn't reboot the device when I switched it to decode mode, which it tells you to do. So device is now rebooting. It's doing the classic little flash across the matrix screen, which is great. I love it because I can see the little screen that's over there by my TV, and it's going to tell me what's up. So loving that. And let's see what's going on. I just lost something. Let's see what is going on over in the chat. Hey, thanks for taking this question and running with it. You are welcome. Today, some of you may have noticed that the topic is about my journey from using OBS Studios originally all the way over to using vMix, and it was quite the segmented journey as to learning about all these various platforms and then eventually relenting and going to vMix. And yeah, we'll talk about that in just a couple minutes. Okay, Studio has come back up. So that is today's plan. I do plan on actually chatting about that. AV. This screen. Video set. If I click. This is so crazy. It won't let me select. Are any of the menus? All the menus are working except for the AV screen. Here, I can show you what's going on here. So this is that Studio. And I can click here. Shows me what I'm doing. Maybe it's the name? I did change the name because this was set to something else. So this is BirdDog. I'm going to call this the BirdDog Original. All right, we're going to hit apply. Go back to the dashboard. Say restart video. It has BirdDog Original. If I go AV menu, look at this. Man, I can't win today. So you know what I'll do? I'll use Central for this. Let's see if Central 2.0 won't tank my entire computer. But also, let's see if it can help us push the decode signal to Studio. So let's take a brief little walk through. We're just loading Central here, but let's take a brief little walk through Central. Now, I'm running Central Pro, but I'm not 100% sure if this version is the latest because I haven't actually used this in quite a while. Multi-viewer Studio, and I want to put this on this guy and hit connect. That totally worked. There we go. Central to the rescue. Not sure what the deal is here. It won't let me click on any of these, but still works. So I connected it to my multi-viewer output, and that seems to have worked just fine. So that's pretty neat.
That's pretty neat.
I'll have to, it's probably corrupted, so I'll probably have to either re-image or do firmware update or something like that on there, but we'll sort that out. Okay, so I am officially up and running, finally. Back to square one, which is what I had before. And yeah, we definitely want to go through kind of this conversation about vMix. It was really interesting because okay, I'll preface this whole conversation about switching softwares and all that. I'll preface this with there is a time and a place for all things, right? And some of you may know that I lifted that from somewhere. But there is a time and a place for all things. And that is very much so true with the products that we make. The BirdDog line, for sure. I mean, there's a time and place for BirdDog products. There is also situations that are not, it's not obvious that is the path forward, okay? And the same goes for video switching stuff. Like once you kind of settle on an infrastructure, right? So if you're doing a brand new install, NDI is definitely going to be a part of this conversation because it gives you the flexibility and the luxury of using a video over IP standard that allows you to not only do your local production, but allows you to ship it, pretty much anywhere in the world in its almost like its raw essence, which is pretty incredible. But there definitely is a time and a place for everything. And I think NDI has a big place to play in many installations. But when it comes to things like video switching and actually producing the show, that's where you kind of have a fair bit of flexibility. And the question really is, like, what do you want to do? Like, what's the end result, right? Because if it's not, if that's not well defined, then it's going to be very difficult to truly hit a target. If you don't well define that target, then it's going to be hard to kind of understand how that goes. And so, the first and foremost thing when you're kind of up in the air, especially as you're designing your studio or you're figuring out exactly what you want to do or how you want to produce it, is to well define what the objective is. And it doesn't mean that you completely understand where the finish line is, because as I've said before on this show, it's like that finish line continues to kind of move into the distance as you get better and better at what it is that you do. But if you have a fairly good objective as to what it is that you want to do, then we can start deciding where we invest our money. Now, there are lots of factors at play, right? Like, so there are lots of churches or lots of school groups or whatever that have a limited budget. That's just, money is not necessarily unlimited. And so to do a studio setup like this may not be feasible, or to stream a church service with multiple cameras and guys on, moving cameras and all this stuff like that may also not be realistic. So what is it that you want to do? What do you want to achieve? What's the point of streaming? Why are you putting content out online for the sake of putting it online, or is there a targeted audience that you're going for? Are you speaking directly to a specific market, like people that are using specific types of products? Are you trying to hit a wide, broad range? Are you trying to just be a trusted source when it comes to having an opinion about something? So there's a lot, like, I think of guys like Marquez, right? MKBHD, where he started just reviewing his mom's camcorder in his living room or wherever it was. And his first video was just to review and just to give his opinion about that piece of technology. Well, he's still doing that, but just on on steroids, basically. He's just going to the nth degree. And so there are lots of, why are you producing something? And I think, actually, there's a lot of folks in the wild who have not defined that clearly. And let's, you can speak honestly here about that, is that I think a lot of community groups, a lot of churches, a lot of maybe community sport events, there are lots of places that haven't defined the first question. And perhaps it's that they feel they're not qualified to answer that first question. This is kind of apart from the whole vMix conversation, by the way. This is the prelude. I have sat in meetings with leadership and asked them flat out, what are you hoping to achieve? And nobody knows how to answer that question. Like, they don't have any idea as to how to even approach it. And so after I get done with dealing with, here's why you might consider doing this, or here are some ways of doing this, when I go through those conversations with them, a lot of the times the feedback that you get after that conversation is, well, we really don't know, so we need you to kind of steer the ship. And that's the wrong approach, I think. I think giving ownership away from the greater picture of, where the ship is going needs to be integrated as a part of the overall plan, not delegated to some technician. And it's fine. Technicians can make those choices, but then when it comes time to, well, why are we doing this again? There's nobody on the leadership side that can advocate for why it is that those decisions are being made. So there's a long conversation that needs to be had, and ownership needs to be given to proper channels to make those decisions. And then once the target is defined, now you can figure out how to aim for it and potentially hit it. And again, the why would you buy BirdDog, or why would you buy an NDI product, or why would you use vMix or OBS or whatever? Why? Those questions are answered after the target is defined. And so here's a great example of like what it is that I'm up to here in this room, right? I am providing a live show for you to communicate with BirdDog directly, with a person who represents the company, but also to somebody who has experience with the products and understands workflows and understands networks and to a degree, and is doing this regularly twice a week to prove that this can be done. And it can be done as a single-man show, for example. We haven't expanded to where I need a producer sitting in the office. We haven't gotten to a level where that needs to happen, that this is clearly just a one-man show. So I'm BirdDog specific, right? I'm talking primarily about when BirdDogs are being used in your installation, how do you make that work? Now, there are guys like Tom St. Clair, Eastern Shore Broadcasting, who had a show yesterday, by the way. He does every Wednesday afternoon. You need to check him out. When you have a guy like Tom who's doing more of like a review of the entire industry and how to make things work, and he is vMix focused, he's X-Keys focused, for example, some of those opinions where he has a broader range of exposure to the products in the market, that's really helpful as well. And he has a specific audience that he talks to every week, okay? So define what it is that you're up to. And you don't need to publicize that necessarily, but you and your team, or you, if you're a one-man band, need to have that probably defined a little bit and maybe write it down. Maybe write down what is the point of what it is that you're doing. This is an exercise that a friend of mine, a recent friend of mine, but a guy that's been helping us out here with the BirdDog support channel and a few other places, he put that out there as to like, well, be sure that you define what it is that you're doing, because then it will help you steer the ship as to where it is that it needs to go every week. So instead of just getting on here and sitting and twiddling my thumbs and waiting for people to ask questions, I actually have purposed content that I'm going to present, but also provide you with an avenue to actually speak directly to me. So it's super helpful. Define the target, and then put it on a reminder, on a reoccurring reminder on your watch or on your phone or whatever, to redefine it, to revisit it. Make sure that the goals are aligned with what it is that you're trying to do, but then make sure that the pieces that you're adding, the elements that you're adding, and the things that you need it to be going to the next level are also within the eyesight of where it is that you're going. And I'll talk a little bit more about that actually on Tuesday, as I'm going to do a product review, and I'll post something about that later on this week as to what it is that we're going to talk about. But I've spoken about it before, about making the show, incremental updates and getting it to go in the right direction, and thinking about it as not arriving to a destination. Here's what I think a lot of churches get wrong, and a lot of community groups, and a lot of high school sports, and a lot of sports in general, collegiate sports. They think that there is a destination, and they need to arrive at it, and then we'll be achieving our goal. But so much of streaming and what it is that we do in the technology world is never really about arriving necessarily, as it is about going along the journey and getting better as you go. Because you'll find that the goal that you define this month is going to be slightly different next month, but in 6 months, it may look very different. You may be utilizing those resources in ways that you hadn't foreseen, and that might come about organically, or it might be a part of the master plan. But you really don't know until you get into it and you start working it and you start, making it better over and over and over. The other downfall with this is to have a target so well defined that nothing can change it. It's a danger, because the thing that people might really need may not be the thing that you originally envisioned. And that goes for the end result of your production, honestly. If, you have this vision of, you've got guys on the ground and they're using, little float cams and their steady cams, and they're running around the field and they're recording the game, and it looks like an ESPN broadcast and whatever. But then you find out that like the majority of your audience are not interested in that. They don't want the up closes. They want to see the play unfold, or they want to see more of the leadership, or they want to see more of the more of the mundane things. Well, those are the things that you should be showing, because that's what your audience is, and that's how your audience grows. Now, sidebar, audience of this show has been growing like steady for the past several months, and that's been great. Thank you for all of you guys who have subscribed over to birddogjohn.tv. That is where everything happens, right here on the support channel. And if you want the updates from there, I'm putting stuff up there as often as I can. But birddogjohn.tv is where it's at. So feel free to reach out to us and subscribe to the show over there, because that's where we're at. And that's all I'll say about that. All right, let's take a little pause here. Let me jump into the chat real quick. What's going on, Emerizo? Hey, quick question. I'm doing a firmware update on my P200A4. About how long would you say the MICU update takes? Takes about 15 seconds. I put the flash drive in, then pulled the power, reconnected. Now the camera head isn't moving. Okay, so that's usually an indication that something's your USB is not formatted correctly. So go back and redo that process again. Okay, and I'm going to show. I got my playlist running here for my little speech portion, but I am going to stop that real quick and just pull up the heat map. Got a couple of more people checking in. What this is if you scan that QR code there at the top of the screen, you will be taken to a Google form that just asks, what country are you in? What's the closest major city to you? And if you hit submit, your pin will appear on this map. And so I like to kind of track it a little bit. I don't really use this data for anything other than it's fun to see where you guys are from. So feel free to check in, and I can even pull up the form independently and see kind of where folks are in. So Baltimore, Helsinki, these are new cities that have shown up, and that's it's pretty cool that we can see those on the map all kind of together. So if you don't see your pin on there, go to that Google form and just submit. It doesn't collect any emails or none of that. I don't track anybody's information. It is quite literally just a what country, what city. Let us know where you're at. So it's fun to check in. Thanks. He said, Rizzo says, thanks. I've tried 2 flash drives. Both are formatted FAT32 on a PC, and the MICU version says 18. Release note says it should say 26. Yes, so that means it's not updating. So did you follow my update video? Not formatted, don't just format it FAT32, but you have to go through and do the unallocated, reallocated sequence. I have a video on that. You know what? I don't know if it's on my channel or not. It should be. It's on the BirdDog YouTube page, but it's also on the knowledge database. So be sure that you follow that exactly, because it's really particular about making sure that you do it. Oh, and the file, like the unallocated size, needs to be 256 megs. Okay, so it needs to be a really small drive. Traditionally, because the reason for that is because it does a bit-by-bit scan and it times out. And so if the drive is too big, like if it's 8, 12 gigs or whatever, you know what? And I can do you one better. I can grab it for you and throw it in here. So let me just, I know exactly where it is. So let me grab it for you. Hey, BirdDog John is live. Hey, it actually shows that the channel is live in there. That's amazing. Okay, so videos, playlists, live support shows, conversations, products. Where is it? How-tos. It's under this playlist. View the full list. And USB formatting process, right? Chia. So this guy is, copy this. And paste for, oh, and look, Balu's already got it for you. Thanks. Well done, Balu. So if you're over there on Twitch. So he's thrown it on Twitch there for you even. So perfect. Thank you, sir. Yes, that formatting process is vital to the success of your update, so don't forget. Got it. Thanks, Balu. Yeesh. Thank you, sir. Appreciate that. Alrighty. So I am going to just switch over here, and we will chat a little bit about vMix. I don't know if I'm going to break this up as a segment or not on my show. Maybe I will. Just I don't know how long it's going to be. I don't really have a well-defined 3-point sermon worked out here. I just was basically just going to talk about it because people are interested in knowing a little bit more the contrast between the two programs, OBS in particular. And I can tell you why I left. It purely became a matter of, here, let me pour this into my non-sponsored Ember mug. Too much coffee. And I made a mess. Oh, well. Today's show is not brought to you by Ember Mugs. Keep your coffee hot and your creamer curdled. I'm not sponsored by Ember, although if they would like to sponsor me, That'd be fantastic because I really like your products. But yes, I got my Ember mug here. We're ready to have hot coffee for the next hour, and that's pretty exciting. But we'll giddy up with that. Okay, so the question has been... Actually, let me start this. Let me get this correct. Okay. So the question has been for a while now, what is the differences between OBS and vMix? And I've actually made kind of this arc journey from OBS, originally from Streamlabs, which is not an OBS platform officially anymore due to some lawsuit or something that happened. But I went from Streamlabs to OBS to Wirecast to vMix. And that journey happened over the span of about 2 or 3 years. Way back when I started running support for BirdDog, this was back in 2019, 2020, somewhere in there, I started up a show because people really wanted me to call them. And I was working out of my home office, and I did not have a phone number, and I did not want a phone number, primarily because it was my home, and I was doing support out of my own house. And so I didn't want a phone ringing in my own home where people are asking about business-related things, where it was disturbing my family and everything. So I opted not to do that. But instead, I opted to turn on a live stream once or twice a week. And the original shows went for like 3 hours. And the way I was doing that was in Streamlabs, which was Streamlabs OBS, but has now just become Streamlabs. And back then, it was basically me sitting online, answering questions, and being available to answer live support stuff. So I said, look, if you don't like submitting help desk tickets, no problem. You don't have to submit a help desk ticket. But instead, you can talk to me live. I'll just be available online, and I'll be in the comments, and I can be found over here on Twitch. And so I was already gaming a bit on Twitch before I came to BirdDog, and had 0 followers. Nobody was following me. But I was playing original Diablo and playing original, like, StarCraft 2, bunch of games. And just whatever kind of was working for me at the time. What was the game? Lord of the Rings Battle for Middle-earth 2? Man, that game was so good. It was like Command & Conquer, but all Lord of the Rings themed, and I love that game. Still play it when I get a chance. Anyways, I was streaming through Streamlabs, and I thought, I could do this with BirdDog and just get a BirdDog account and then just stream everything through there. Now, sidebar, handling 2 BirdDog handling 2 StreamYard accounts and switching between the two, streaming gaming and streaming for a company, was not simple. It was quite complicated, to say the least. So, I fired up this show, and it went for like an hour and a half or 2 hours at first, and then it just kept going on, and people kept asking questions. But they also, there was this weird thing about the community that was growing around this stream, that people were trying to do NDI kind of in silos, right? Like they felt like they were on their own out in the wild and trying to figure it out. And that became evident pretty early on, that there were people doing NDI, playing with BirdDog stuff, trying to make it work, but they really felt like there was nobody in their community around them that were able to help them. So that's what this really became. I started promoting it as, hey, the stream is a place where you can show up and hang out with me, and I'll answer your questions over on Twitch. So I had a BirdDog John Twitch show, and that gained a fair bit of popularity. Twitch was really good about funneling people to your show. It wasn't for everybody, but I think by the time I officially stopped streaming exclusively to Twitch, it was around like 300 followers, which was not too bad for this style of show. So Streamlabs opened up plenty of opportunities. It was a fairly straightforward streaming service, and I can't remember if it was ingesting NDI natively or not. I don't think it was. I think I was having to convert that over with like a studio. So I had a camera, and I was converting it into basically just I had a Canon camera, and I was just converting that into a usable stream and talking to people through Canon. So you may still be able to find, I don't know if they're still out there or not, you may still be able to find original videos of me standing in my office at my standing desk doing training videos, and in particular some of the older ones, again in like 2020 era, and look for ones about like Studio and Mini. Those videos are probably still out there because they're still relevant, because we haven't really updated those devices since back then. So really interesting to run the show, and we found out that there was a fair bit of interest. I found out there's a fair bit of interest of people just wanting to chat about NDI and the industry and what was happening. So I was running StreamYard, but the issue that I ran into was it wasn't ingesting NDI natively. And I did know of a plugin for OBS that Streamlabs, my apologies, I use StreamYard, Streamlabs, wasn't ingesting NDI natively. And so I switched over to OBS Studios, which is an open source platform. And back then there was a plugin that you could use that would allow for NDI to actually be ingested directly too. So as I was receiving products to use and test, and as the camera line, for example, the P200 camera line came online shortly there in the 2000 realm, and became very popular, and then the P100 shortly thereafter, I was using those cameras in my office. And so then I had a couple of angles, and the primary camera was still actually my Canon camera, but I had I think I had a P100 on my desk for a while, and then a 200 that was kind of up on an angle, giving a secondary shot. And that worked really well. And OBS would bring those signals in all natively, which was nice. The major issues that I ran across, though, when I switched over to using NDI in an OBS platform was the audio synchronization. That really became kind of a moving target based on CPU usage of my computer, which wasn't a bad machine. It's actually still quite a good machine given the specs that it has. And the level of NDI integration. So I had two signals on the network. I didn't have a very sophisticated network. However, at the time, BirdDog had bought me a Unify switch and I think a small gateway. Yeah, like it was like one of the square gateways. So I was using that to kind of govern my NDI network, and then passing traffic, and really cutting my teeth on how do you do NDI networking for a DHCP network on that configuration. And some of those switches are still in operation here in the main office today, although I think their life is coming to an end. So I had set up this little DHCP network, had my devices on there, and was ingesting these things into OBS. I used that in through 2021, and we moved into this office. I think we signed a lease in this office in, was it January 21? I think it was, yeah. And so January of 2021, we signed a lease, and I was using OBS when we came to this studio. And this room became the official studio for this show, but also for our training videos and things like that. And we started actually producing a fair bit of stuff out of this, from this desk. And in February of that year, I think February of 21, I had a visit from Dan, and who else was here? Maybe it was just Dan that time. And I did an interview with him here in this studio, in this room. And the issue I was having, so we had bought a little different computer, actually this one that I'm using right now, which is also about to get upgraded. This one that I was using right now was running OBS Studios, and so OBS is free, by the way. It's open source, which is kind of the nice thing about it, is because it doesn't cost you anything. The problem is that there's very little support in terms of there's no one you can call if something goes wrong, and it's really up to you to make sure that it works well, which is part of the issue with open source stuff. Is there's nobody that you can actually ask for help other than Reddit, which is fairly responsive, by the way. I'm not downplaying that at all. The Reddit community is actually fairly robust when it comes to OBS. But what do you do when things go south? And I was having issues. I was having performance problems. For example, screen capture into OBS, which is a natural thing that OBS does, doesn't need NDI. but screen capture plus 2 cameras and, you know, an output basically going up, streaming up to YouTube at the time or Twitch at the time, it just wasn't consistent. I wasn't able to do it. And I needed to lighten the load of, you know, make sure that the resources were balanced correctly. So OBS, I had that interview with Dan, and man, it was rough. It was not good. It wasn't smooth. It wasn't going up to Twitch very evenly. And I think around then I was flirting with Restream at the time. And so we're playing around with some additional services, you know, sending one stream up. What I was doing was I was connecting to multiple streaming services. So I was streaming over to YouTube and to Twitch and to a few other things, and that was overloading the CPU. Plus, I was bringing in a few NDI cameras, which was overloading the CPU. Plus, I was doing screen capture, which was overloading the CPU. And I was getting drop frames, getting performance issues, all sorts of things. And so I quickly outgrew OBS when I started actually embracing the abilities of NDI. And I needed to do something a little bit more stable. And a friend that I had at Telstream at the time basically sent me a version of Wirecast that I could use and try out and see how it works. Now, Wirecast is laid out differently than OBS is. OBS, you build the scenes that you want, and then you fire those scenes, and you can see them. Now, that's basically what this is with vMix, is that I'm building different camera angles and scenes, and I'm outputting those channels. Now, I'll get into that in a minute with vMix. But Wirecast was more about layers, where you would have, you know, your items would be layered on top of each other, and you could choose how you wanted to do that. But if I had like a still image, if I turned that layer on and it was above a camera image, the still image would be shown on top of the camera, and you wouldn't be able to see my camera. And it's just a workflow thing. It's not really a good or bad. It's just how your brain is wired. And I think I said this when I switched over to vMix. Actually, I'm certain I did. When I just said, look, there is a place and a time for all of these items. If you need free software, OBS and Streamlabs can help you get the job done. But if you need something that's a little bit more geared to like specific broadcast or stream, you probably want to look for a paid solution. And there are 2 avenues that you can go down. The first is you can buy a piece of hardware, and this would be something like a TriCaster or a Wirecast system, where you could install it into a network cabinet, and that system would be basically guaranteed to work with the one that, with the, you know, the OS that it comes on there with. So what I like about it is it answers the question to buy the thing, to do the thing for the thing you want it to do, right? So we don't piece together our own computer and try different GPUs and find out, oh, we bought that one, but it doesn't work with that and whatever. You buy a machine, it does one function, you load it in the configuration you want it, and that's the thing that it does. Wirecast has, or Telstream has units that do that, and that's really convenient, creates like a central command type of idea. Whereas vMix is a piece of software. You download that onto a computer and you run a piece of software. Well, you will need to build a machine or have somebody build a machine that will do this correctly for you. And there are services out there that do this, by the way. There are integrators and guys that build these for a living. Tom St. Clair comes to mind, Eastern Shore Broadcasting. He builds vMix machines for people who then deploy them, and they run vMix on there. I stumbled across vMix on my own accord, essentially, because I progressed from OBS to Wirecast. Then from Wirecast, I was using Wirecast, and what was I doing? There was one thing that I really wanted. What I really wanted was a way to switch cameras automatically, and you've been witnessing it here on this recording. Basically, I have multiple angles in this studio, but I didn't want to be responsible for switching those. I wanted them to kind of happen on their own, and for me just to be able to deliver the content to a single camera. And so the legend, Tom St. Clair, he said, well, vMix will do playlists, and you can load a playlist with cameras, and it will go then it'll just go down that playlist when you turn it on. Now, it has its caveats, but it does exactly what it was that I was looking to do, and basically auto-produce the show from different camera angles. And I could interact with my primary camera and not worry about switching the show on my own. I have, like I said, I've had multiple camera angles over the ages, and I've got multiple cameras working inside vMix, bringing in NDI sources into vMix all the time. And so it's hard for me to think through and deliver content, but also be switching the show. And so I allow the playlist to run that function for me. So when I was in Wirecast, allegedly there is a way to do this inside of Wirecast where you can set it up to actually do this, but I couldn't figure out how, and I didn't spend the time to actually sort that out. And so I got a license from vMix to give this function a try. And I started loading it in, and it only took a few days to really understand the workflow. Now, for me and the way that my brain is wired, the workflow in vMix makes the most sense out of all of the platforms that I've used. Okay, I kind of like the Wirecast one where you can build these layers, and you don't have to necessarily worry about the audio, having a trigger on every single input like I do here in vMix, because it's just on one layer of the greater grand scheme of things, and you can just change the cameras as you want or change the video input and leave the audio layer as is. But what I didn't care for is I actually wanted to create triggers based on what it was that I was showing. And so if I wanted to play a sound effect when I went to a screen share, I could just load that in as a trigger and it would do that. And over some time, I figured out how to easily implement that. I also learned pretty quickly on that vMix is tightly knit with MIDI commands, meaning that you can have an X keys device and associate keystrokes with doing, obviously, custom tasks. And so I've had an X keys for quite a while. I also have a Stream Deck, which also has that function inside of Companion. It's just not the same. Not inside of Companion, inside the actual Stream Deck software. It's just not really necessarily the same. It is actually a keystroke, based function, and so I can call different cameras. But I actually like the X keys integration better than that. And I use the Stream Deck for, like a soundboard, basically, if I need to do effects or I need to turn the music on or off or whatever, or cough button. It's all on there as like a simple computerized interface. But I actually like the X keys for the vMix functionality of of how I interact with vMix a lot easier. Mostly because I can emulate the whole preview and program quick buttons that most command consoles have. So I can I've set that up myself. But then the bottom row of buttons I can set up as whatever it is that I want it to do. So I can cut between different cameras. I can call a camera and cut and do it pretty much without looking. And that is extremely convenient for me and the way that my brain produces a show. Now, here's the thing about this entire conversation that you really do need to understand. It is really up to how you work. All right, I can tell you right here, I can say this is the way that you should be doing it. But it is one of those subjective, creative elements in the technical world about producing a show that you have to decide on your own. And this goes back to that thing that I was speaking about before the show started in the prelude, where I said, be sure that you define the target a fair bit. Think through what it is that you want to produce and what the end goal is in the immediate future. And then define it well enough, and then think through how it is that I actually want to produce this. One of the main goals of this show is for me to do it without needing other people to help me with it. Because although I have a support team, newsflash, they're all really busy doing their job. And I've given them jobs to do, and BirdDog has given them jobs to do, and they're all doing those things as they should be doing. What I don't want to do is also then pull somebody off of their task and have them produce it because this became too big. I need a piece of software that can integrate to where I can have commands, control, I can have the inputs I need, I can demonstrate the stuff that I need, all basically by myself. And there is some moderation that happens inside the chats, but for the most part, this show has evolved into, I need to be able to do complex things, but do it all myself. And so that's one of the goals, is self-produced, which means that the software and the switcher that I choose, in this case vMix, needs to be laid out how my brain logically thinks it works. And the contrast between OBS, okay, they have inside OBS, if you're familiar at all with it, but just briefly, they have a list of scenes, and then inside the scenes, they have a list of things that are associated with that scene. So you add your camera to a scene, and you call it like main camera, and then you add your audio channel to that scene. And when you click on that scene and push it into the program window, those things are active. All right. So essentially what that means is, for every camera, you have to add a scene, and then you have to add the audio source that you want associated with that scene. And it works that way based on scenes. You call scenes and you transition them over, you fade or cut or whatever you want to do, and the things that are within that scene are then active. That's fine. It takes a fair bit of ironing out. I'll put it that way. It takes a fair bit of logically thinking through, when I go to this shot, I need these things happening, okay? So, for example, what if you need to play music in the background, or what if you need to show a video that's being shown to the audience, or all of that? You need these microphones to be muted, but you need the audio coming in from the computer. That's a different scene layout, right? Okay. Now fast forward to Wirecast. Wirecast is built on these layers, which is kind of nice, because you can have an audio layer on the bottom. Then you can have your video layer, and then you can have your overlays. So anything that's in the overlay will obviously take precedence, but you can leave the microphone on regardless of what overlay, or regardless of what's happening on the higher layers. Okay, so this isn't basically building scenes, but it's building these layers where you can control which audio inputs, which camera angles, and then which overlays are all happening. And you can organize that how you want. But in my brain, that didn't really map out naturally. That wasn't really the way that I naturally thought of, how do I get things to an output. And so I stumbled upon, I was well versed in what vMix was, but my friend Tom Sinclair suggested and advocated that perhaps you should give it one more real think through and play around with it a little bit. So I started building my outputs as I thought they should be. Now, vMix is broken up into inputs, and then into, you have a bit of a soundboard. All right, so you can add audio sources, but then they show up in your audio mixer. Now, this is not a how to use vMix tutorial. This is how my brain produces this end result show. Okay, that's what we're up to here. I'm telling you how it is that my brain maps out for a self-produced show. In vMix, you can select the camera you want, right? And then you can turn on, like a soundboard, you can turn on the audio channels that you want. Now, you can have, if you switch to a different camera, right, this is the P110, so you switch to a different camera, you can have those inputs trigger different things. So again, if I wanted to have a sound effect play when I switch to a certain camera angle, you can do that by adding a trigger. That's pretty simple to do. But at its base core, you add your audio and you add your video. You can show whatever video sources you want, and then you can turn on whatever audio channels you want. Okay, and there are faders associated with that. There are mute buttons, and there are, sourcing it out to the master mix, and there are audio buses, and there, if you know what that is, and there are a bunch of routing options. It can get as complex as you want, but at the base core, there is a video side and there's an audio side. What are you showing, and then what are you hearing? And as I have said on numerous occasions, audio is king when it comes to video. And so, ironically, if you're going to stream anything, you really need to have full, tangible control over the audio functions. And from my experiences with OBS, I'm actually still using OBS in a couple of other places. Especially, we just updated to the latest version, which, potato at this point. I don't find the audio function of OBS terribly robust. I find it to be overly generalized because its primary function is, from what I can gather, is for streaming content. That's what its function is, getting it up to whatever the platform is that you're using. Whereas vMix and Wirecast and these, TriCaster, they're focused on being able to produce kind of the show in-house and record it locally or send it out as a USB output or ship it out as NDI or however it is that you want to output it. It does those things with excellence too, but its number one function is to bring in the sources and output the show as it is that you want to create it. And with that being said, I find the audio function of vMix the most robust of all of the programs that I've used, which might be saying something, it might not. But in terms of control and levels and accuracy, in terms of decibels and all of that, vMix seems to be by far ahead of the game when it comes to audio, which isn't necessarily something that a lot of people do well, right? And so bringing in high quality audio from high quality mixers and microphones and rigs and including that, but also coordinating that with the greater thing that's happening, okay? So the video element, the presentation element, the audio element, all of these things that are happening simultaneously, the audio piece does seem to be the most robust, which I actually advocate for vMix because of that. Okay, there are lots of video switching platforms out there, but vMix does audio really well, from what I can tell. And for that reason, because audio is king in the streaming world, okay, audio is first. Remember the rule. People will watch a poor video if the audio is crystal clear. But people will not watch a crystal clear video if the audio is poor. If it sounds like garbage, people are not going to watch it. And so audio is king, video is second, okay? And then how you actually have your studio set up and all that, that's kind of adds to the, it creates some sense of ambience. And so, it adds to the overall acceptability of the stream. But people will listen to great audio for far longer than they will watch a poor video. And that is, without a doubt, I don't find anybody that disputes that. They'll watch poor video with great audio. So vMix seems to do audio, as far as I'm concerned, they do it the best when it comes to actually having a mixer. Now, I'm not a huge fan of the way they display it, but I think they're doing what they can with the layout they have. I've seen vMix for all the years that I have been in the streaming world. I don't know vMix to look different than how it's always looked now. It hasn't had an interface overhaul, and I think they safely do that to not ruffle feathers, because whenever you change interface, even when we updated to the NDI5 interface, there were people that complained about now I don't know where anything is, and it's literally the exact same tabs and labels. They're just not on top, they're on the side. It's hard to get lost, but people complained. And I think vMix is sticking with something that's been working for them for a very long time. And the piece I don't know, actually, and this is one of those terrible situations where I don't know how to make it better. I just find that the scrolling up and down, because I got a lot of audio sources, the scrolling up and down just isn't very intuitive. And so, and also, I have noticed that if you use, so I scroll up and down with a mouse, right? With the mouse scroll button. If you scroll on the gray background area, it doesn't scroll up and down. But if you scroll on the audio sources, it does, which is it should just do it for the whole window. It shouldn't be specific to you needing to be hovering over an audio source in order to scroll up and down through all audio sources. But anyways, I digress. I do think, however, in terms of manipulation and in terms of filters and effects and compression and all that, vMix does a pretty good stab at getting it correct. For what it is and for the price that it is, I don't think that you can beat that the functionality of the audio. Now, there is a question that has been asked about, well, wow, even better than TriCaster. I think value for money, yes. I think if you're to get into the TriCaster realm, you're not even talking about, the comparability of these two functioning programs, because remember, TriCaster is a premium broadcast standard product, whereas vMix is available at a really low price point, and the fact that it does audio this well really does outclass the other options in the market. And so, I really think they did it correctly. I think that that's one of the highly redeeming qualities of vMix, is that they do audio correctly, and they've clearly put a lot of effort into it to make it right. And so that I highly approve. Now, kind of trying to wrap this up here, and then I'll take your questions after. But to kind of bring this full circle, vMix, like I said earlier, okay, vMix has its place, and so does Wirecast, and so does OBS, and so does Streamlabs. Those streaming, and so does TriCaster. They have their respective places. Where you land and what you need and what your resources are and what that defined goal is that we talked about, the answers to those questions will really dictate where it is you land. And so I cannot come on here and say everybody needs to buy vMix, or everybody needs to buy a TriCaster, or nobody should be using anything but OBS. Like, if that's a really naive way of thinking about streaming, mostly because vMix is great, but it has its place, and it's not for everybody. It is for a lot of uses. I promise you that. And I was not a huge fan of it when I first came on, and I was converted, and now I'm a huge advocate for it, because it does do everything that I need it to do. There are folks that say, oh, well, you could use Wirecast, you could get it to set up and do it that way, or you could set up OBS to do that. It's like, yes, I could. But in terms of being intuitive, the way that my brain is wired, what it is that I want to produce, the end result of the show, that definitely needs to all be taken into consideration. And I think of all of the items that I have attempted to use, all of the streaming platforms I've attempted to use over the ages, I think vMix hits the most buttons that I need to do what it is that I need to do. And so OBS was great. It was CPU heavy. It was really limited in terms of bringing in multiple camera angles, doing any sort of automation. It was pretty rough when it came to audio mixing. Pretty rough. Even the latest version of OBS still isn't great when it comes to audio. Wirecast had its place, and I actually enjoyed using Wirecast a fair bit. It was a different way of achieving the end result, but it wasn't it wasn't bad. It worked really well for what it is that I wanted to do. But I wanted to do a couple of specific things, and there was plenty of resources to show me how to do that inside vMix. And so I came over to vMix and gave it a try, and within about a week, I was fully loaded in this program and have been really comfortable with it. Now, the bonus material here is, I think one of the things that makes vMix great is the fact that you can integrate it with X keys or MIDI command style keyboards, and you can really make it your own and make it work perfectly for you as the producer, if you integrate a product like that. Because then it's not this business of keyboard and mouse and hunting and clicking and whatever. Where vMix really shines is setting up shortcuts to execute complicated commands quickly. And so if you want to cut between cameras, if you want to fade between cameras, you can give all of those items commands to do. And you can even have enable cough button and mute audio, which I know that I didn't say anything, but you can mute audio fairly easy just by a click of a button. You can route audio through these things. I think that is what makes vMix very usable, because it doesn't become, here is the program that everybody should use. It becomes, here's a program, now customize the crap out of it so that it works perfectly at your fingertips. And quite frankly, I could run this whole show without this keyboard. I don't need it. I need the mouse and I need my X keys, and I could do it. And if I had the 80 button X keys, I could probably get rid of the keyboard entirely. That, I think, is what really makes vMix super versatile, is that they make those shortcut commands very available, very easy to understand. You play around with it for an afternoon, and you pretty much can map it all out. I really like the X Keys platform for that purpose, and I just so happen to own one personally, and so I brought it in and used that. I have integrated Stream Deck. It's okay, but it's just, I don't know, I actually don't find it as nice as the X Keys, and so I use them both. It integrates audio really well. vMix does that really well. It integrates NDI natively, so you don't need plugins, OBS plugins or runtime updates. Oh, the new OBS update that just came out, it upgrades to NDI 5, which means you have to do all these runtime updates and restarts and blah, 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 blah. It's brutal. You don't have to do that with vMix. vMix allows you to integrate NDI natively, and it outputs NDI natively, and it doesn't completely destroy your CPU. It also allows for GPU integration, which is huge when it comes to processing power. So if you have a halfway decent GPU, you can offload processes to that, or offload all the other processes to that and just let vMix run on the CPU. It's great for resource management. It's great for audio. Does great NDI integration, and it just seems overall to do exactly what it is that I need it to do. And so I would advocate, if you're unsure, download the trial from vmix.com and give it a go. I have been slowly converting a few of the congregations that I work with, converting them over to vMix just to give them the versatility of this type of system, but also for the usability and ease of training volunteers. It does really make a lot of sense in terms of, here's your preview, here's your program, what's in program is what's going out, here's your audio meter to make sure that, you know, it can be heard. I think that's where I want to leave it. I have evolved over the ages of, from just trying to get something up for people to talk to me through, to like legit switching a show so that I can interact with people, but also output it via NDI, have vMix as an NDI source on the network. It really does naturally answer and utilize resources correctly in order to achieve my end goal, which, like I said, I'm constantly defining. I haven't arrived. This is a work in progress. And boy, if you could see the runaround usually before every single show, it's a work in progress. And they all are. You're in this boat with us, all right? It's all a work in progress. But what will make it better? What's the next step forward that would make this a little bit better for you and for your production? And so I think vMix does has great answers to that question. And it feels natural for me to interact with the software, to set up shortcuts and commands, but also then to actually produce this show and interact with you through it. So hopefully you find that helpful, and we'll get back to the comment section over here on birddogjohn.tv. All right. Killed the recording. Let me see what's going on in the chat. So there are some significant changes in OBS, particularly with the 29 release. Have you checked those out, or are you committed to vMix now? Okay, so I am committed to vMix. Questions answered in the presentation. I was trying to keep an eye on, like, if anybody had said anything of relevance, I could try and like work in a little bit. But I am committed to vMix in this show. However, I am using OBS on a Mac at a congregation on weekends, which I will actually be producing their stream this weekend because we moved their whole production suite into a room. Okay, so here's a development. So I help a congregation out occasionally with their stream here in town. And one of the things that I had recommended to them a long time ago was that they move their production out of the auditorium and into a quieter room. Because to get a proper audio mix going up to YouTube, they really need to not be hearing the ambient sound of the auditorium. And so they need to get out of there. So we moved them on Sunday after service. We moved them into a former cry room, which is no longer being used for mothers with young babies and is now basically storage. So we put them in there. We ran SFP from a Ubiquiti 8-port switch over to a 10G Tech SFP to Ethernet converter, 1 gig converter, and then directly into the Mac that's there. and all of the sources came up. That seems to be working really well. We will find out on Sunday if it streams correctly. But we need to, we brought over the audio sources via XLR, which is nice. And again, need to test those things. So we'll be going in early on Sunday to test that. And then I'm really excited because the only thing that I think is really missing now are monitors, speakers. But, we'll have to sort that out. But the only thing that's genuinely missing now is speakers. They have a good set of headphone cans with closed back headphones. So I'm hoping that will improve the audio quality of the show. As you know from watching this show, I like to cut cameras a whole lot more than what generally people use. The important piece will be that we have a correct wide shot, and then we do have a BirdDog P200 in there so that we have one that can follow around. That will be the workflow for Sunday. Tempted to take an extra camera just to give me some versatility, but all in good time. So that's a sidebar project that's going on, and I really want to get them to vMix, but everything's a Mac, and there's not a Mac version of vMix. So you can run it in Boot Camp or in Parallels or something like that, but I hate those programs. They're just not perfect. So are you going to play Diablo 4? I don't know. I struggle with Diablo 3, and it was just there was just so much to think about and know and whatever, and maybe, but I don't know. So we are playing with OBS 29 now, and the interface got updated a little bit. It's a little cleaner. It's a little easier to look at, but they didn't integrate NDI natively. You still have to download the plugin. It's so dumb. I don't know why they're missing that, but there you go. People will watch podcasts that have no video. It's true. People will listen to podcasts for hours and hours and hours if they have great audio. But they will not watch a video for hours and hours and hours if the audio's crap. Did I say that right? I think I said that right. Hey, what's going on, Angus? Good morning. Oh, hey, and now that we're done that little thing, I'll throw my little QR code back up there. Hopefully you're doing well, man. Good to see you again. I strongly prefer my X keys over a Stream Deck. There you go. Stream Deck is nice. You know, it allows me to have some cool little quick sound effects.
How neat is that?
But I definitely do prefer my X keys for calling the show. And the only thing I wish about X keys was that it's just a little bit cheaper, but I understand they're expensive to make. So I might add, I don't know. I don't know. Let me think about that. Hey. All right. So now we can jump over to the heat map and let's have a little look-see. Angus is checked in Canada. Man, hot coffee after a whole hour of the show is great. Hey, you can drive an RV everywhere you go, and people do, but many people would do better with a car. It just depends on your needs. It's very true. I mean, I understand that manufacturers get mad when they hear somebody say, yeah, vMix, or yeah, BirdDog, or yeah, TriCaster. You know, it's not everybody's thing. Everybody shouldn't have one, but it does answer the need for a very broad market. And I think vMix checks the boxes on a relatively inexpensive software, PC-based software, for what it delivers. It really does deliver well. And even the HD version is pretty good. Like, it's pretty fantastic. So I definitely... now, again, it's not going to be the silver bullet for every single production. That's just not how the world works. But it definitely is going to be for a lot of people. And they continually make it better. They support their product. To me, it's very stable, extremely stable. So I wasn't, and again, people let my office mates laugh at me because it's like I wasn't an advocate for a very long time for vMix. And then I started using it and I was like, you know what? It is pretty stable and it is pretty well thought out and quite a good video switcher. So, you know, what can I say? Hey, much appreciated, John. We'll definitely be getting vMix a trial when I get my X120. Past midnight here. Have a great day and a weekend. Take care of yourself. You must be my friend over in Perth. Yeah, it's so much easier to mix for a stream when you are away from the PA system. Seriously. The last Diablo I played was the very first one. Currently hooked on Tears of the Kingdom after a few runs through Breath of the Wild. Very cool. I have yet to play Tears of the Kingdom, and my daughter, who is like 9, loves Breath of the Wild, so that's probably in our future. So tempted to grab an X124 and with a T-bar. It is tempting. You know what? Let's give a little network traffic to my friends over at the Sloganless Company. Pi Engineering. The inventors of Xkeys, xkeys.com. So, explore DMX. Control a DMX universe with this transmitter. Allows software to send control values. Oh, cool. Customize. I need that right there. I need to customize mine. Shop now for Xkeys programmable keypads. Keyboards. Look at the size of these things, man. KVM boards. So this is the one that I have, the 24. It's great. The 60 button, $230. Yikes. As low as? Wait. How do we get a discount? The 80. This is the one that I think Tom Sinclair won or something. He got it at it was a trade show or something. But anyways, that's made in Michigan? Wait, what? Seriously? 554? Jeez. That is a pricey mamma jamma. See, this guy, a 40 key, this would be great for the church that I work at. Serial controller. This would even be really good. They do have a Stream Deck. The problem is that we don't actually have like a joystick control. I don't have a joystick for them, so moving the PTZ is really about preset recall and not about live action, which is kind of a shame because I think churches that have somebody actively following the speaker on stage, whoever it is, looks way more personable than just like static shots of like when the minister walks across the stage and it goes to a wide shot and then he stops at one side and then it goes to a close shot and you know like they're catching up to him. I know what's going on behind the scenes. I don't find that stuff particularly engaging when it's somebody wandering about on stage. It needs to move with him, you know, which is the advocacy for manned cameras. That is generally why it's important. But then you need a whole volunteer base that understands how to do that. So it took 7 seconds for my LA green dot to appear. Yeah, that is some great feedback. Thank you. What's going on, MTash? Have you gotten any more info on the JVC vMix box? What's going on, Montana? Have you gotten any more info on the JVC vMix box? I don't know what that is. That is a foreign language to me. Honestly, it makes BotW feel like it's just a demo. It's just so good. It makes... Wait, what? What feels like it? Wait, I'm so confused. What did I miss? I'm missing something here. Catch me up to speed. I definitely, though, like I said, I'd love to get some of these made in Michigan. That's cool. 40 buttons at $209. This would be the one. Oh. This should be the one that I have in here. This is essentially what I use. I wish I could. Well, I guess I could show you with my overhead camera. Let me do that. So my desk is a bit of a mess. Let me try and straighten this up a hair so that it's not a total dump. So my X key is going to be upside down here for a moment, but the let's cut to here. So this X keys is upside down, but this is essentially what I'm doing. I'm doing preview here and program here. These buttons are generally empty, and then I have a couple of things that are functioning underneath. But I love that X keys has little LEDs in there, and that it's very easy to set up and use. So yeah, I like it, and like everything is, I keep it right here, and then I put my little Stream Deck over here, and I just kind of keep everything quickly accessible, so I can just punch things in or fade things out or whatever. Turn on playlists, and or like I can load this into preview and then cut to it. I can load other cameras into preview, and it's super easy. It's very convenient. My primary cameras are these 4 buttons, preview and program, and then my cut command is here, right in the corner, and then my audio muting is going to be right there. So that is, it's very easy to get around and like to know where you're at, you know? So yeah, really, really simple. Just Googled it. Look at V&H has a pre-order list for JVC branded vMix desktop controllers. Oh. Okay, so if we... This is the JVC RM-LP 350G. JVC product overpage. vMix controls. Ooh. Interesting. I did not know this was coming out. So this is desktop control surface. Oh, I can share this, I guess. Desktop control surface for vMix control surface adds tactile controls to a traditional production switching interface. vMix Go, or any system running a vMix software. That is cool. Where's a bigger picture? I need a bigger picture. Visuals. Pictures. Here we go. How big does this picture get? Ah, there we go. That's better. So 3 rows of buttons. Really? Transition buttons? Okay, question. Is anybody using the swipe functions of the transitions? I find them unusable. Like, here's the thing, guys. Where is it? Let's see this here. So like this is so weird. They're so weird. I don't like this. So strange. No, stop. Who uses that? Those are, I'm probably going to get in trouble here, but those effects remind me of PowerPoint back in the 90s. That's what it reminds me of. It doesn't remind me of like professional. That's why I just love a cut. I love a cut or a simple cross dissolve fade. But like, just make it easy. Don't do this. Why I feel like Gandalf here. I have no recollection of this conversation that we had about this controller. Are you sure this was me? You sure I was the one that had this conversation? vMix branded rack computer, the KV-IP8 vMix Studio switcher. Oh my goodness. The KM-IP8 sounds about right. This is the first I'm hearing about this too. It looks interesting. I'm not interested in the computer, but the control surface looks pretty nice. You looked this up a few weeks ago, and I brought it up after NAB. Oh, okay. Well, forgive me. I have definitely had my age showing, apparently. I use wipe transitions when color matching my cameras. Wipe to 50% and adjust. Oh, interesting. But you don't use them in production, though? I generally do hard cuts for cameras and fade to black for open and closes and playbacks. Yeah. Those effects are old style. Well, I mean, again, some people might really like them. But when it comes to like you probably don't need a dedicated button, right? Because I'm pretty sure that's what we're seeing right here is these are transition buttons. Now, are these buttons like can you swap them out? It has its own little T-bar. That's cool. I mean, I'm telling you. So for $750, or you could buy an X Keys keyboard and a T-bar insert for probably less than that. How many? That's 128. This 80. Why is that twice the price? That seems insane to me. This seems like overkill. I also don't they have adapters and switches and pedals? Don't they have like mounts for these things? Accessories, components, mounts, and kickstands. I need a stand for mine. I need a tilt stand. I need this is what I need. But I lost mine. I lost one of them, so now I can't use either of them. But then this thing's kind of cool. It's like acrylic mounting thing. And this little tilt stand is kind of cool. So I'd be interested in something like that. Why are they the same price? These two products are exactly the same price. What is that? Angled feet? How does that work? Ooh. For the XKE series. Interesting. I do like this this like mount idea, fixed mount idea. I'd love to get it to where you could like clamp it on the side of a desk or something. I don't really need it high. I just need it to kind of like be angled up. I think the kickstand is the one that I really need. I also need more of these like clear covers because mine have somehow disappeared. I'm missing 3 of them. I really need to have better friends over at X Keys because, see, look there, there's like a tilt bar right there, or the T bar is right there. It's cool stuff, man. I do love me some X Keys. It's not the controller, it's the rack build. Oh. So this is the JVC IP8 rack build. HG TV supply. Oh, guy. $5,000. Comes with Windows 11 Pro, 4 display outputs, vMix 4K licensed software. So, okay, so for $5,000, you could buy this little connected cam studio. I don't care for that name. Minimum of 8 NDI inputs. Minimum? Is that right? vMix 2 RU display ports. Yeah, man. Pretty cool idea. This is built by JVC. The KM B&H video switcher. Special order. I like that red plate on the front. That's cool. What is this port for? USB, power, and reset. Power right on the front like that? Oh, well. And then what do we got here? No redundant power for $5,000? Come on, guys. USB. This just looks like a standard board. 1 SD input, 1 HDMI. Are those simultaneous or no? Can you have 2 inputs or just 1? Let's find out. Specs. Yoink. 1 RJ45 port for NDI. Oh, here. 1 3G. So it looks like they're together. 4 display ports. There you go. SDI. Embedded audio. That's good. Fascinating. It's a fascinating idea. I mean, there is something to be said about pre-built units, right, that are like built for a purpose. So I feel like I do remember seeing this before, so perhaps that is the conversation The first hack will be to reprogram the transition buttons. I demand the video toaster falling sheep transition. Wait, I don't think I have that one. The T-bar is a bit more than the JVC, but it's X keys, so it's probably the way to go. Way I go anyways. The worst day of my life is when the students found the falling sheep on TriCaster. On second thought, maybe it was my best day. Hopefully they got over it quickly. They moved on to the closing laptop transition. The SDI and HDMI are outputs only according to the specs. NDI in only, and no dual NICs. Boo. Yes, boo indeed. Is there Thunderbolt on board? Because if there is, you could get SFP Plus, do 10 gigs in. Rack mount vMix system does more and costs me less. Where did you get your rack mount system? Did you build it yourself? Those are outputs. It looks like a Blackmagic card. They have a separate model with SDI inputs. Oh, okay, cool. Good to know. Good to know. Alrighty. Well, let's have a little look-see at the heat map and see where everybody is. If you haven't filled it out already. This is where everybody's checking in from today. This is just a heat map of where everybody's watching from. So be sure that you scan a little QR code. You will show up on that map fairly quickly. It refreshes as soon as you hit submit, so it shouldn't take too many seconds. But yeah, really fun to see where you guys are hanging out from. And I get a little list at the end of every show as to where everybody is. Now, I don't keep this information. I reset it, so we're ready to go next time. You are definitely going to want to hang around next week. And in particular on Tuesday. On Tuesday, I plan to do a studio product review. And spoiler alert, I'll tell you what it is. It is a Telscript NDI monitor. It is something that was sent to me to kind of like look at and review and put in my studio and see how it works. And spoiler alert, I'm using it right now. So I'm going to play with it for another day or two, but then I'm going to give a review as to my experience of the unboxing and how it all kind of goes together, but also how it is that I'm using it in the studio. It fixes one of the major problems that I have in the studio, and so I'm excited to share some of that with you guys. But if you don't know who that is, this is Telscript. They make teleprompters, essentially, and this one just happens to be NDI enabled. And so it's pretty great that I've stumbled across this. BirdDog Jake had a friend in the industry who was able to kind of give us a few to review and check out, and so I definitely want to do that, and I'm going to do that on Tuesday. So be sure that you come back and hang out with us on Tuesday. I will set up a little reminder on birddogjohn.tv to join us, and we'll talk a little bit through that and how it is that works and integrates into our system. So let's finish up here. Yeah, I built this in my own rack system. It's my third iteration now. Currently, it's a 6RU Gator case with a PDU, Focusrite interface, 4212PX switch, and the PC. And it was under $5,000. Man, those Gator cases are not cheap. I see a few more people have checked in here on the map. Let's just 6U Gator case. I have, is it rack mounted or is it portable? It's probably portable for you, right? I have a similar device, but mine is a 4U, and it's rack mounted. It's on rails at my home. I actually have a network rack in my office because I'm a nerd. But yeah, that's a beast, man. Very cool. It'd be hard to add it all up at this point. The capture card and the Focusrite are left over from the first gen builds. The 4212PX is probably the most expensive piece in the whole puzzle. I also have a PDU and my 4212 in a little 2RU case. Very cool. Yeah, I mean, if you need to be versatile in that way, right? Then these Gator cases are great. I have a Gator case at home that's for some portable audio stuff that I was doing, and it works pretty well. I also have one of these in my basement for all of my entertainment equipment and such. Because I'm a nerd like that, and I'm a network guy, and I like to have all that stuff in network cabinets. So, you know, good stuff. All right, folks, I am going to wrap it up because it is officially 12:30, and I probably need to get after some things here. I've got some meetings this afternoon that I need to attend to, but also, yeah, lots of stuff happening at BirdDog. So we're trying to get after it and get some things kind of taken care of. I really appreciate you hanging out with me today, and as we walk through the journey of transitioning from OBS all the way to vMix, it was quite a bit of a travel, but we eventually got there, and here I am learning every single day. And that's the whole point, folks. Is the point is not to arrive, the point is to continue to sharpen that sword and make that edge a little bit better every time you stream. And so hopefully you have heard some of that today. Also come back on Tuesday, because we're definitely going to talk about making small incremental changes and how it is improving things in the long term. And so be sure that you join me on Tuesday again of next week at 11 o'clock, and we will talk through that addition to the studio. But in the meantime, take care of yourselves, everybody. It is a crazy world out there. It was like, had a thunderstorm at random at 6:30 this morning, woke me up, and then cleared up, and now is not too bad. If we take a peek out at Auburn Road or Auburn Hills real quick, you can see it's quite overcast. But you know, we'll survive. Michiganders are pretty hardy people, so we will continue on in that same vein. But in the meantime, guys, take care of yourselves. Look after yourselves and each other. Pretty important these days. And in the meantime, we'll look forward to seeing you next week right around 11 o'clock Eastern time right here in the U.S. We'll do another heat map, and we'll go again. We'll talk a little bit more about new toys to play with, which will be super fun. So take care of yourselves, guys. We'll see you next time. Bye.
That's a problem for future Homer. Man, I don't envy that guy.
Don't fail me again.